The ocean is full of monsters. Some we know, like massive great white sharks and giant squid, and others that live on in the stories of sailors, passed down from one generation to the next. From demon sharks in Mexico to giant tentacled creatures in the north, here are 6 sea monsters that are actually based on real creatures. Starting with a tale that every sailor in the North Atlantic grew up hearing. A shadow that rose from the sea, big enough to swallow ship's hull. This was the Kraken. For centuries, the Kraken has been the ultimate sailor's nightmare. Some sort of an octopus squid adjacent monstrous beast lurking in the cold northern seas, waiting to rise from the depths and crush ships like toys. The earliest accounts of the Kraken come from the Norse sagas, where it was said to be so freaking massive that sailors sometimes mistook it for an island, anchoring their ships to its back before realizing that the island was alive. Later folklore painted it as an even darker legend, and according to this legend, when it surfaced, its sheer size would create whirlpools capable of dragging entire fleets beneath the waves. And for whichever sailor that was navigating the coasts off of Norway and Greenland, you'd be scared out of your skin. Some even believe spotting the creature was a bad omen, almost a guarantee of death at sea. And here's the thing, these tales circulated for centuries, passed down from one generation to the next, likely getting more and more embellished over time. They even found their way into scientific texts of the 18th century. It was here that naturalists started to debate the authenticity of the Kraken and whether this entire legend may in fact be a fact or fiction. And of course, like always, when you actually cut through the mythology and the lore, there's a far more reasonable, but equally as terrifying explanation. What these sailors were almost certainly encountering was the giant squid, an elusive deep-sea cephalopod that is capable of reaching lengths of up to 43 feet long. We rarely ever see these squids alive, and the only time we see them is when they come to the surface for their last moments, or, I guess now, occasionally on a deep-sea bruv. But imagine the shock of a crew seeing one just break the surface in rough seas with its tentacles thrashing, even if it was only visible for a few seconds. That fleeting encounter would be enough for sailors to start cooking some incredible stories. And if you factor in the uptick in giant squid carcasses washing up on shores or dead whales marked with sucker scars, it's no wonder the Kraken became the myth it is today. And you may be thinking, oh wait, it could be the larger colossal squid, the largest squid ever, which can reach lengths of up to 46 feet. However, this squid is only known to live off of Antarctica, the opposite pole to which the Kraken legend originated. Now, could this have been a new species? Maybe even an undescribed species of giant octopus and squid hybrid? I guess we'll never know. But when you take into account these huge giant squids coming to the surface in their last moments of life, their siphon shooting out water, their tentacles up in the sky, maybe bumping into a boat or a sailor, even washing up on the shore, you can understand how the legend would have evolved to be this monstrous thing that is even stranger than fiction, but not as strange as our next animal. Across the world, in the warm waters off of Mexico, fishermen still whisper about a shark that makes the great white look like a literal baby. Dark, monstrous, 50-foot sea creature known as El Demonio Negro, the black demon shark from Baja, Mexico. My own obsession with this cryptid began at a chance meeting with a fisherman in Baja like 12-15 years ago, where he told me when he was out fishing, this large animal hit his boat. It was something that was big and black, and I said, well, is it a this, is it that, is it a whale shark? He goes, he'd never seen anything like it before. It's a demon shark, like some oversized evil twin of the great white shark, but jet black, bigger and more lethal, black as the deep itself, which immediately leads you to think, is it a melanistic great white shark, which as far as I'm aware has never been proven to exist. So reports from fishermen have come from decades and been compounded year after year. So the description when talking to this fisherman is usually the same. Large, black, aggressive, it's like a great white shark.
Gran sombra negra.
It's big, huh?
Sí.
Now, the obvious thing to say to yourself is, hey, it's a whale shark. Those are the biggest sharks on Earth, and they're black, and there's tons of them in the Sea of Cortez. But these men have been fishing in their own, oftentimes incredibly calm seas and waters of the Sea of Cortez their whole lives, and they sit there and go, no, It's not. I'm telling you, there's this giant evil black shark. They describe it to be like a shadow. They say it seems to be following the whales, preying on the whales as they move south. It's a crazy story. And all these things point to, okay, could it be this melanistic gray white? Is it a big mako? Is it something like that? But the one other thing that everybody says is that the demon's gaping mouth is allegedly big enough to eat a whale. So that's where it gets interesting, right? Fishermen are known for their tall tails, myself included, but the one detail that keeps coming up is the whales. Now, the Sea of Cortez is one of the most diverse bodies of water on Earth. An abundantly rich marine ecosystem, which includes a ton of endangered and rare animals, over 170 species of shark, allegedly. It's an area that Jacques Cousteau himself called the world's aquarium. So who knows what animals could actually be lurking in its depths. But I believe that my team and I narrowed it down when we were there in 2021, and that big clue is the big gaping mouth. So we decided that we thought fishermen in low light were accidentally bumping into whale sharks and saying, oh look, it's the black demon shark. It's big, it's black, and it's got this big mouth. But as I said before, these fishermen actually grew up fishing in the Sea of Cortez and seeing whale sharks, and they know what a whale shark is. I actually think it's something else, and we weren't able to get one in the show, so our conclusion was a little bit different to what I wanted it to be. But I actually think what's happening is there is a giant, scary looking, predatory, quote, shark down in the Sea of Cortez, and it is hanging out around the whales, and it's not a whale shark, and I'll tell you why. Many of the fishermen described it having a mouth big enough to swallow a boat. And yes, true, a whale shark does have a giant mouth, but there's another giant shark that has an ashy gray skin that is shaped much more like a big great white, that does hang out on the surface and hangs out in many of the places the baleen whales do because it's eating the same thing. However, it is very, very rare for this shark to go into the Sea of Cortez. That's why I believe when fishermen see this on the very infrequent times that they go into the Sea of Cortez, they are mistaking the basking shark for the black demon shark. Think about it. You look at a basking shark, it's got this huge mouth, they filter feed open, these big gills, it's shaped more like a great white shark, it's got this crazy gray ashy skin, it just kind of looks like a demonic shark. And because they're so rare to be in the Sea of Cortez, that when one accidentally slips up there instead of going up the Pacific, it kind of makes sense that everybody that sees it would freak out. So I think there is truth to this legend. I think the black demon shark is indeed a real animal. It's just not predatory. It does bump into boats. It is huge. It is a 60-ish foot long, 50,000 pound basking shark. So that's my assessment of the black demon shark. It's not scarier than reality. It's an incredible, gentle giant that I would love to swim and be around, and getting to see one in the Sea of Cortez following whales would be absolutely insane. Now, Mexico may have its demon shark, but Japan has something even stranger, a sea monster said to slash ships with its spiked tail. Now, Japan might be the first place that comes to mind when you think of sea monsters like Godzilla, but off the rocky coastlines of Western Japan lurks one of the country's most feared legends, and it's not a giant reptilian dinosaur that's going to smash cities, it is the Isade. First recorded in an old Japanese bestiary back in the 1800s, the Isade was said to be a colossal shark-like predator that never showed its full body. Instead, fishermen only ever saw its tail, which was said to be enormous and covered in rows of tiny barbs, literally like a living fishhook. The legend goes that when the north winds began to blow and the seas turned strange colors, the Isade would often appear without warning, with its tail rising out of the water to hook sailors, capsize their boats, and eventually drag people beneath the rough seas. The name itself translates to beach stroker, because this monster was said to kill even those standing on the shore with one mighty sweep of its tail. And to those living in coastal villages, unexplained disappearances of fishermen and travelers were often blamed on the Isade. Now, here's where the folklore gets interesting. Japan, contrary to popular belief, is actually a hotspot for shark diversity. Of the over 500 known species of sharks in the world, nearly a third of them live off the coast of Japan. And among those 500 odd sharks is a species that fits the bill of the Isade, the pelagic thresher shark, a species I like to call the samurai shark. This species was coincidentally first described by Japanese scientists in 1935 and is the smallest of the 3 thresher shark species, still growing over 12 feet long. What makes it unmistakable is its tail, an absurdly long whip that can stretch nearly as long as the shark's body itself. And thresher sharks are famous for using that tail to stun schools of fish, but in the chaos of a thrashing sea, it's not hard to imagine a fisherman seeing only the flash of that weapon and assuming something monstrous had just claimed his crewmate. Add in the thresher shark's rough skin, which really does feel like sandpaper. This could explain the barbs, and suddenly the Isade starts to look a lot less supernatural and a lot more like a very real shark with a legendary reputation. Hey, speaking of monsters, this thing is a monster. This is my Formex field watch. It's the second rendition of the field. It's absolutely beautiful. It's awesome. It's made from ceramic, so it doesn't rub on you. It feels really comfortable. I like it on the leather strap. It has this amazing auto adjust strap. And it's called the field because it's designed for the field. I've had this thing in the mud, I've had it in the water, I've had it in the dirt, and it still looks brand freaking new. It doesn't scratch, it is indestructible, beautiful timepiece. Formex supports what we do as a channel. They make unbelievable watches at really affordable prices. Please go check them out at the link. Get somebody a great watch as a gift. They're gonna love you forever. I was never a watch guy until I got hooked up with Formex. Now I'm all about it. So join me. Let's talk about some more monsters. If you think samurai sharks are terrifying, just wait until we head south to Colombia's Pacific coast and you'll hear about something just as menacing. Let's talk about the Malpello monster, or as the locals call it, El Monstro. Out in the middle of the Pacific, 300 miles off of Colombia, lies Malpello Island, a remote, rocky outcrop that's become legendary among divers and biologists for its incredible shark life. You get schools of hammerheads by the hundreds, silky sharks, whale sharks, you name it. But lurking beneath that frenzy of familiar species, there have long been whispers of something else, something far stranger. For decades, divers have claimed to spot a gigantic, pitch black shark prowling the depths around 150 feet. They describe it as monstrous in size, hence the name, nearly 20 feet long with ragged teeth, jet black eyes, and quite an aggressive swimming pattern that gave it the nickname El Monstro. Now, these stories weren't exactly make-believe. In 2001, a marine biologist named Sandra Besudo, who I've spoken with many times, actually launched an expedition to investigate the legend. And on an ordinary dive at Malpello, she swears she came face to face with this massive, unidentifiable shark. The encounter rattled her so much that the following year, she organized a full-scale expedition to track it down. But her team faced storms that cut off access to the island. So what was or is El Monstro really? At first glance, it sounds like some prehistoric megalodon lurking off the coast of Colombia. And my theory is that what divers were really seeing was a rarely encountered species of shark called the small-toothed sand tiger. These sharks can grow up to 17 feet long and weigh over 600 pounds, making them absolute units in their own right. They're one of just 3 species in the sand tiger family, and I've swum with their cousins, the classic sand tiger shark in South Africa, the Carolinas, and Australia. They're incredible animals, but because the small-toothed sand tiger spends most of its time in deep waters, sightings by divers are extremely rare, which makes Malpello the perfect place for the legend to take root. But here's the twist. Divers often describe the Malpello monster as jet black in color, and small-toothed sand tigers are usually more of a uniform light gray. That's where things get really interesting, because there is another shark out there, the big eye sand tiger, which we've talked about in earlier videos, that match the description of this cryptid almost perfectly. This species is practically alien. It's a jet black deep sea predator, and confirmed sightings are almost non-existent. In fact, the last time one was photographed alive was years ago, and the last dead specimen turned up off of Korea in 2019. Fewer than 10 have ever been documented. So, at a tiny little island outcropping off the coast of Colombia that is surrounded by deep sea canyons, could one of these shadowy giants have wandered up from the depths shallow enough to encounter a diver or fisherman in the Pacific and sparked the entire Malpello legend? We'll never know for sure, but I'd say this mystery is at least partially solved. Not every sea creature in legend was all teeth and terror. In Japan, there's a strange story about a literal shark person. Samebito. This monster is sometimes called Kojin, which literally translates to shark person. And unlike the elegant Western mermaids, the Samebito was described as monstrous, an inky black shark-like humanoid with a demon's face, the beard of a dragon, and eyes that glowed like green emeralds. According to legend, these creatures lived in the South China Sea, where they wove impossibly fine sea silk on looms underwater, and this was said to be fabric that never got wet, no matter how long it had been submerged. But what really made the Samebito famous were its supposed tears that fell as pearls, or in some versions, rubies and gems. So the tale says the Samebito had the face of a demon, the beard of a dragon, and the green glowing eyes. That sounds preposterous, but believe it or not, there's a very real shark off the coast of Japan that checks almost all those boxes, the Japanese wobegong. This is a bottom-dwelling carpet shark that maxes out at just under 4 feet long. But to an unsuspecting person, this is a pretty alien shark and one that bounds to spark legend. Wobegongs have long tasseled-like barbs that hang from their mouths like a dragon's beard, and a set of lightning-fast accordion jaws that can suddenly lunge forward when they strike prey, giving them that terrifying demon face description. Their mottled camouflage makes them almost invisible against coral or rocky sea floors, and then there are the eyes that seem to glow when caught in the right light. To an unsuspecting fisherman or diver in centuries past, stumbling across this shark in shallow reefs at night could absolutely spark a legend about a shark person. So what about those tiers of pearls and gems? Well, to me, that's just gotta be pure myth, but it shows how a fleeting glimpse of an unusual animal can become perpetuated and grow into something bigger that it isn't. You know, you look at this animal, it's got this scruffy chin that looks like a beard. It is shaped in kind of a humanoid way. If you look at the face, this accordion jaw, super dark and blends in. You're looking at it at night, probably with a flashlight or a flaming torch, and you see those green eyes glowing, and it starts to turn into a person-like animal, and it starts to have emeralds falling out of its ears, and all these other funny things. And it just shows us how these legends perpetuate and grow as they're passed down from generation to generation. So I really do think this Japanese wobegong is this incredible cryptid. And with that, let's go from the supposed shark man on land to something that I personally think is arguably much harder to pin down. Kagewani. The Kagewani, or shadow shark, is one of the strangest and eeriest sea creatures in Japanese folklore. The story goes that these monsters lurk just beneath the surface of the Sea of Japan, waiting silently in the shadows near rocky coasts. What makes them so terrifying is the way they were said to hunt. Instead of simply chasing fish or attacking boats, the Kagewani was said to swallow shadows. If a fisherman leaned over too far from his boat, the Kagewani would rise up and gulp down the shadow of the person and grab him and pull him from the boat in an instant. When a person's shadow was taken, the persons themselves would vanish forever. Legends of the Shimane Prefecture tell of fishermen who mysteriously disappeared without a splash. Their companions left to swear that something beneath the waves had stolen said fishermen away. Now, when you strip back the folklore, what might these shadow sharks actually have been? The word wani in Old Japanese was used for all sorts of sea beasts, from sharks to dragons. So it's hard to pin down exactly what people were describing. But off the coast of Japan, there really is a shark that does kind of fit the bill, the incredible megamouth shark. This enormous filter feeder reaches more than 20 feet in length. They're the third largest fish in the world and are in fact dark, looming shapes in the water with huge gaping mouths. Megamouths are so rarely seen that they might as well be creatures of legend themselves. For a fisherman staring into the water centuries ago, catching a glimpse of one of these incredible deep-sea shadowy giants, it would feel like staring into the mouth of a monster. And is it possible that at least one person may have accidentally fallen overboard and been swallowed by one of these giant mouth sharks before? Unlikely, but it's possible. I think that the Kagewani was the first attempt to explain the bizarre fleeting encounters with one of the world's largest and most mysterious sharks in the world, the megamouth shark, in one of the only places that you can somewhat reliably see it off the coast of Japan. Hey, let me know if you guys like me breaking down monsters. I believe that every bit of animal lore is rooted in some form of reality, and a lot of those times those realities can be tied back to the features of incredible animals. And you all know how much I love incredible animals, and you do too. That's why you're gonna hit that subscribe button. See you next time.